And Bitcoin on a fundamental basis is wonderful. And then before you even wrote your book, which I read your book and it was great, I would tell people, like, look, the world is filled with unequal weights and measures, and God says that He hates that. That's an abomination to Him, and that a just weight and a just measure is from the Lord. And I'm like, I look at Bitcoin like, this is from the Lord. And like, this is God. Like, this is God Almighty giving a gift to mankind. Like, this is incredible. This is great. Everybody should have it.
Bitcoin Well is a non-custodial Bitcoin platform in Canada and the USA. That means every single Satoshi you buy goes straight to your self-custody. They offer free withdrawals, a simple 1% spread, and they have the Bitcoin Wishing Well, where you can win up to 1 million Satoshis by earning points and throwing the coin in the well. In fact, you get 5 coin tosses to the Bitcoin Wishing Well when you sign up at bitcoinwell.com/pastorcoin. Welcome to the Bible and Bitcoin podcast. I'm your host, Alan Armstrong, aka Pastor Coin, and today we have another guest, Everyday Dominion on Twitter. I didn't even ask you your real name, but you don't have to give it. That's irrelevant.
Yeah, no worries. It's my first name is Charlton, so there's not a lot of Charltons out there. So you can probably find out.
Do you ever get called Carlton?
I grew up with it. Given our generation, Alan, and Carlton from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, it was often what's your name, Charlton? Oh, like Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Can you do the dance?
Well, can you?
I can, but I never said that.
Okay.
You
know what? In high school, I would have ridden that out. I would have embraced that gimmick. I would have been Carlton.
Yeah. See, I did not have the confidence for that. I felt more offended that people would be like, because Carlton was the joke of the show. So I always felt like they were just looking at me like I was a joke. And I took myself way too seriously, man. Way too seriously as a kid.
Well, to each their own, I suppose. Now he was a joke, but now he's like the coolest character, pop culturally speaking.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I met a guy who actually knew him. And said that who he is on the show, that's who he is in real life. I said, really? He's like, yeah, he might act like he's not, but he'll be on the side of a concert, no one else backstage, and he is full on doing his dance, totally engaged. It's really who he is. So that's
he embraces the character. He is the character, and maybe that's why he was so successful with it. Just be yourself. So this is a podcast about. I know it's called the Bible and Bitcoin, but it's about more than just Bitcoin. It's mainly about the Bible and about a Christian worldview, and really the angle I'm trying to take here, the principle I'm trying to proliferate throughout the Christian church is a low time preference Christianity. It's getting back to living a life for Christ that has a vision that's bigger than your own life, than your own timeline, and put it that way, because we only have a sliver of time. We don't know how big that sliver is, but we have it, and we tend to only focus on that. But I think God is the God who knows the beginning from the end, and He wants us to also have that time preference of eternity, really. So I see your posts on Twitter, and I appreciate it. I actually think, by the way, as a side note, your account is probably the most underrated. I look at your followers. I'm like expecting to see 15K, 20K. It's only 2,000. So for all that is good and right, go follow this guy right now. Pause this podcast. Go follow Everyday Dominion. Is that the actual at? Yes, at EVRY Day Dominion.
Yeah, I had to cut out I couldn't spell every completely out. I cut out the middle E there, but we scored at least something close to it.
Go follow now, immediately. Okay, so that's your name, Everyday Dominion. So tell us a little bit about what it means, Everyday Dominion. What does it mean? What do you mean by that? Because I get the feeling that that's not just a random name.
Right. Yeah. No, I spent some time on that name. Thinking through it, and a lot of it honestly has to do with the entire Dominion mandate, right? I mean, when and I don't know about you, this is for me anyway, when I started going to church and I came to the Lord, started going to church, and I'm in, now I call it the evangelifish, but evangelical Western Protestant church, it was all just, hey, just Jesus and gospel only. And the more I grew and the more I matured in the Lord and the more I just lived life and realizing how much help I need in so many different areas, from my diet and exercise to understanding finances, which is, Bitcoin is, I'm huge into Bitcoin. That's another topic, but what does it look like for me to take ownership of these things instead of these things running my life? And the more you look into it, the more I realize, oh my goodness, this is dominion. And then you look back at Genesis chapters 1 through 3, and you think, even especially like 1 through 6, you have the entire gospel message. I mean, you have everything. Well, really, in 1 through 3, you have the entire gospel message, right? Like, you have everything you need to know to live a good, solid life, all there in Genesis chapters 1 through 3. And when Christ came, he never did away with the original mandate of go forth, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth, right? Fill the earth and subdue it. And it's the original dominion mandate. So how do we do that in our everyday? That's a really big vision that God gave Adam and Eve. However, he didn't tell them how to go and do it, right? He said, just go. And then we get to fill in the gaps there. We get to fill in the blanks and learning how to do it.
What is your take on Matthew 28 in relation to the dominion mandate? Because the way I see it, it seems like, and you can give me your take, or maybe it's the same, who knows. It seems like Matthew 28 is just basically repeating the dominion mandate, but like you said, with the blanks all filled in.
Yeah. And if you take it from the right perspective, I believe you're absolutely right. So I don't know if have you read "It's Good to Be a Man" by Michael Foster? Have you read this?
No, but I'm supposed to be at a conference with him next month, so maybe I should read it before I meet him.
You should. Oh man, it's great. Yeah, it's really, really great, and he really nails it. But when you look at when you look in the very beginning, the way God made it, God made Adam, and then he made Eve, and he put Adam above Eve and Adam together above the animals, right? So like, God made all the animals, and then he gave them their masters, so to speak. And if you look at Adam and Eve, he gave them a place to live with a bunch of pets, right? I mean, that's kind of how it worked. And he's like, all right, you guys go make some babies, and you guys take care of all this stuff that I'm leaving you, right? And so that's the order in which God established things. And then what happened is in the very beginning again, right? You had Eve talking to a snake, and the snake deceiving, right? Or the Satan through the serpent, right? Deceiving Eve, and then Eve giving the fruit to her husband. And so you have Adam following Eve. So you have Eve following the snake, Adam following Eve, and it flips the entire order in which God made the world and everything in it. And so now we have chaos in the world. And when Jesus came, right, he came to reestablish, we would say, at least everybody across the board can say that he came to reestablish a relationship, or to reestablish a relationship with his creation, right? To reconcile the world unto himself and reconcile man unto himself. And that's why he came. And so, but we often overlook again the dominion mandate in the beginning. And I go all the way back to, if you go back to when Jesus rose from the grave, okay, the very first person he sees is a woman, right? And simultaneously, that woman mistakes him for something. What does she mistake him for?
The garden keeper, yeah.
The gardener, yeah. Right. And what was Adam's very first job?
The gardener.
He was a gardener, yeah. Right. And so like when Jesus is there, he's getting mistaken as a gardener.
That's a good point. I never made that connection.
Right. It's a callback. It's a callback to all of it. So when he says go forth and disciple the nations, well, there's a lot to discipleship other than this current, and I don't know how else to call it, but like this very shallow, multi-level marketing scheme of I go make disciples, I disciple people for 6 months, and then you go and make disciples. But the discipleship is so shallow. It's like, here is some basic understanding of the Bible, not here's actually how to live out your life as a Christian. Here's how you can parent. Here's how you can raise up godly offspring. And so it's not all like, here's how you can establish order within your home. Here's what a good functioning marriage looks like. Here's what a good functioning sex life actually, might like. You don't want to say what it looks like. You're not going to show that around, right? That's what we're partly having this podcast. But here is how you can live a life that is fulfilling. That is the way in which God originally designed things, so you can go and live it. Now, I don't know. I don't know how many children I know I know you're a dad, and I'm a dad, and I think I would assume that you're probably, when you go to your children, you want the same things that I do for my kids. And I think when I see my kids, I want them to have the best day of their life every single day. I want them just to have a day full of joy. And all of my rules that I establish at the house are all for that. Don't touch that hot stove. Don't put a fork inside of the electrical outlet. Right. I mean, don't talk back to your mom, because now we have a character issue, right? I'm not going to, and so I'm not going to have, the only one thing I will absolutely not allow is flawed character, right? It's like, we want you to establish to be good and loving people, to look like Jesus, because we know that's the way in which you're going to live the happiest. But at the end goal, it's all for your joy. And so when God came and when he made the earth, he established a solid earth. He established, like basic reality principles. And it was all for, like, Adam and Eve, and he wanted them to fully enjoy his creation. He wanted to get them to get work, to have work, and to be about work, and then to fully enjoy his creation and each other. And so that's it. So when we look at these things, it's like, well, how can we enjoy them? And so all that to say, all the way back to discipleship, what does discipleship look like? And I would say, yeah, I mean, if we could all live like Adam and Eve, that'd be great. I mean, that's the number one thing people say, is if you could go and undo anything, what would it be? It's like, stop eating the fruit. That would be great.
Ideally, that would be great. And thankfully, that is what Jesus actually accomplishes for us. When he rises from the dead, he does reverse it. And we're just sort of in this intermediary period. But one of my biggest frustrations, you bring up children, not children, but you bring up children. One of my biggest frustrations is talking with fellow believers who have a sort of doom and gloom outlook about the future. I was talking to one brother a couple days ago, and he was getting kind of agitated because I kept saying, like, bro, I think things can get better. Like, they don't have to get worse. And I asked him a simple question. I said, is quality of life for human beings better or worse now than 2,000 years ago? There's no doubt it's better.
It's better.
Just air conditioning alone.
Dental.
Exactly. I had a toenail removed last week, and I'm not kidding. Now, when I tell people that, it's like, oh, you could smash my hand with a hammer. You could punch me in the face. I've been punched in the face. I've been kicked in the groin. I've experienced these things. I would rather get kicked in the groin than having my toenail pulled out, frankly.
Yeah.
Because it hurts. Now, I was laying on that table and the doctor was doing this. I didn't feel a thing.
Wow.
Because of medicine, modern advancements. And where did this start? This is a result of the Christian worldview proliferating throughout the world. And I literally laid on that table and thanked God that I wasn't feeling a thing, as my toenail was literally being ripped out of my foot. Which, in the old days, they would have stuck a block of wood in my mouth and said, bite down on this. This is going to be painful.
Yeah.
So anyways, all that to say, I'm talking to this guy, and this doom and gloom, it's just certain people just have it and you can't shake it. So I wanted to ask you, how do you respond to those Christians who say things like, well, the Bible says things are going to get a lot worse?
Yeah. Yeah, I have, I think the majority of my friends are like this. And, we look back, it's prolific in our Western culture. Especially outside of, I don't think, well, you might be right. You're from Romania, yeah? Or your parents were?
Yeah, I was born there, but I pretty much grew up in Canada. We came back. We just missed the revolution. So as soon as we left to Canada, then communism was overthrown like 4 months later.
Okay, because I think Orthodox and the Catholics don't have, at least I think they're not supposed to. I don't think they have the same view as the Western Protestant dispensationalists.
I don't think they do.
Right. I think they're more what we call all millennial, right? So, but the dispensationalists, which is what you're talking about, and that is, think Left Behind series, that's just it's all throughout our culture. The end times is now. Look out for the Antichrist. Here are the times and the signs and war, and like watch Israel, and what about this, and everyone's all eyes over there because of these things. And but if you want to be honest, if you're being honest, and then the truth is, this is all new theology. It's all new eschatology, at least from my understanding. It's all in the last 100 years. It's like, think World War II. World War II was so bad. I mean, Hitler killed a third of the Jews, almost 2/3. I mean, it was so bad that they were like, maybe things aren't getting better. But before, they were like, things are definitely getting better. This is all. I mean, look at Jonathan Edwards. Jonathan Edwards was what's called a postmillennial. In other words, things are only going to get better. The number of saints is going to outnumber those in hell, right? The gates of Hades do not prevail against the church, and so on. So that was, that used to be the norm. And so this thought process that you're talking about, I have a lot more hope, used to be a lot more, it was normal. But in our society, it's gone all doom and gloom. And as a sign of the times, you don't have to look very far to just see doom and gloom. I mean, it's spread throughout the news, every which way from Sunday, from finances to, and not even just spread, but a lot of it is true, right? Finances to climate, to the president, to communism, like invade, like all of these things. And it's all really, really bad, but it's all in, maybe it's in a select few nations. It's not, and now are they the major nations? Sure, absolutely. But like, I don't think things are worse for people in El Salvador. Right, like things aren't worse for them at all. In fact, they're on a really solid trajectory.
Things are improving there.
Right, exactly. Things are improving in Fiji from like the 1990s, when all of their reefs, their coral reefs, were like being destroyed, and then they became a Christian nation, and now their coral reefs are booming. And so there's all sorts of different ways in which you're going to measure better or worse. And so I would say, and so what I do say is to people is pretty much the same thing that you say. I say, look, let's be honest. Would you rather be, King Solomon himself with all of his amenities, or your average Joe person today in the West? My answer is like, I'd rather be my average person today in the West.
King Solomon could not have had his toe frozen.
No.
He would have to feel that pain.
He would. Yeah, absolutely, man. So like, he wouldn't, I mean, there is just a reality of like, everything is better, even when it comes to war. I mean, the last 100 years has been the most peaceful 100 years in human history. And ever since the atomic bomb dropped, right, our bombs dropped, it is the least amount of casualties. It has been the safest it's ever been. We've only had growth. Now we're starting to, we're starting to see things like, the demography, like worldwide, starting to decline and drastically. And we're going to see that in a lifetime. The next 50 years is, hey, I'm not saying it's going to be an easy 50 years, but it doesn't mean that things are necessarily, they might be getting worse, in the sense of like, compared to 50 years ago today, but like, what about 500 years ago, 1,000? Not at all. Things are only better. And so fast forward 50 years from now, could things then be all of a sudden like all this terrible things are flushed out? Like, governments are better, or, maybe these ones are worse, but other ones are really on the rise, and we can move, whatever it would be. Things as a whole for the world things could really be looking up, and probably will be. And so I think, we have a tough 50 years ahead of us, but I mean, that doesn't mean that the world is ending at all.
Do you think this is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, when all the Christians in a place all of a sudden get really hopeless about the world? Because, as I was talking to this guy, he was like, look, I'm not living for this world. This world is going to burn. It's going to, it's going to pass away. I'm living for eternity. I'm living for heaven. And okay, that sounds really spiritual, and that sounds really noble maybe. But at the same time, all I could think about while he was saying this stuff is, man, why do you hate my grandchildren? Why do you hate my children? Like, don't you want a better world for the next generation? Isn't that sort of what God tells us we should work towards? I mean, you can't really read Deuteronomy or any of the law and not get this feeling that God wants each generation to strive to make the next generation better.
Yeah, and I think the reality is, and people don't see it, is that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's also too, like, wisdom is known by her fruits. Wisdom is known by her children. And so if you're in this mentality, then you just need to look at the fruit of their work. Like, is it good? Is it excellent? Is it something praiseworthy? Is it something salty? Are you being salty? Have you lost the salt? Are you just crossing your fingers at that person when you talk to them about Jesus, they're going to come to the Lord? Are you like, you know what, man, Almighty, I'm going to go talk with this guy about Jesus, and he's either going to fully hate me and punch me in the face, or he's going to come to know the living Savior. And I'm going to have those two extreme viewpoints because that's what the Bible allows me, and I'm not going to really hope for anything in between, you know. And if the other one, if it is like something in between, then okay, that's I mean, I imagine the majority of them are in between, but your hope should be I'm walking with God through life. And if he is for me, who can be against me? And if he is for his church, who can be against her? And that's when he's like, the gates of Hades will not prevail against his bride. They will not prevail against the church. And so if you have an optimistic mindset, then, you know, like if you are expecting Jesus to come back to literally tomorrow, then your viewpoint on what you're going to do today is going to change drastically than if you think Jesus is going to come back in 1,000 years from now. If he's coming back tomorrow, then I am going out on the street and I'm telling every single person I know it's over. Tomorrow's the day. It's happening. I'm full on going for. I'm not just saying it. My feet and everything else is following what I'm doing, and it's going to be a different strategy than if it's like, okay, 1,000 years from now. Then I'm gonna say, okay, well, if it's 1,000 years from now, like if it is tomorrow, then I'm not going to worry about. I'm going to tell my kids I love them. Then I'm going to go to work real quick, and I'm not coming back because I'm going to see them in heaven and it's over. But if it's 1,000 years from now, then I'm going to disciple my children. I'm going to love my wife well. I'm going to be there. I'm going to establish a good godly home. When people walk into my front door, they're going to know that it's different. What is different about this place? Why? They're going to see things in my daily routine. They're going to they would be able to look at they'd be able to look at like my search history for the computer. They wouldn't have to worry. I'm not sitting there I'm establishing in my every single day, I'm establishing the dominion of God Almighty. I'm establishing his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And I'm praying that, right? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Not thy kingdom come and whisk me away and rescue me away. It's like, no. May it look like on earth the way it does in heaven. When people see me, may they see me and think, that guy kind of looks like Jesus. You know, or I don't even know what it is, but something very attractive about this. And it's his entire attitude, his persona, his everything is God Almighty is great and he's worthy, and you got to get on this train because he's worth it. You know, so like my entire mindset, everything is going to shift, and I'm going to turn into a producer. I'm going to turn into the long game producers. Like we got to plant fields. I got to think generationally. I got to make sure there's an inheritance for my children's children, not just financially, but culturally, like family wise, that all the habits that we're learning in the home, they would naturally carry out at their home, because they don't know what it's like to not sing a hymn around the dinner table because they want to sing a hymn around the dinner table. Right? They don't know what it's like. They don't know a day where we didn't read scripture, because that's a part of what we do. It's because it's who we are. And he is worthy of all that we have. And so it helps us as believers even establish that culture, instead of what my good friends Joshua Hames would say, the kamikaze culture of of dispensationalism, right? It's just like, okay, all out suicide mission, just end it. He's coming back. This is the last helicopter out of Vietnam. We got to go.
Yeah, well said. In your view, what is the most, I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with what I mean by the term fiat, the connotation of fiat. In your view, what is the most fiat thing proliferating throughout society right now?
That's a really good question. The most fiat thing proliferating throughout society.
Aside from like straight up unbelief.
Yeah, or okay, yeah. Yeah, because I mean that's the easy answer, right? Sin. But like a lie that everyone's just buying into, but works, and it works for the time. You know, I think I'm going to say the American dream. And when I say that, I mean we've fallen into the ditch of you can be whatever you want to be. And that means that you can be a girl if you're a boy. You can, and I say that like on every aspect, even if you don't want to be, even if you're a girl and you want to be a girl, but you see that Instagram lifestyle and you think, oh yeah, I'm going to marry a guy who's 6'3", and you know, all the stuff that the red pill guys are talking about. I mean, they're all right on the data, but they're wrong on the answer. But you have, like, I think that's it. This concept that, you know what, you can live out, you should go and live out your dream. And whoever you marry should be on board with your dream. But they don't realize that in order to actually love somebody, you have to lay your life down. And if you are going to, and this is why I think that you just have the divorce rate is so abysmal, even in the church. is so bad, because even culturally speaking, there's this undergirding lie that people think that, okay, well, I'm supposed to go and be this individualistic person to go do this dream, and then you have, men and women both wanting to do that, and I say, it's like, it shouldn't be that the woman lays down her dream for the man and the man just gets to do whatever he wants. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, the man is called to lay down his life for the bride, the way Christ did the church, and lead by example in that. So when you have two people who understand real sacrificial love, where they're saying, I'm going to lay down my hopes, my dreams, my desires, I'm going to put them all at the foot of the cross of Christ, and I'm going to pick up my cross, I'm going to follow him, and I'm going to give my whole life to my wife, and my wife to me, and we are going to do what he has called us to do, arm in arm together. That's a completely different world than this entire concept, or black pill that we've swallowed as a whole. I don't know if that's the right term, but as a whole, that says, oh no, 50-50, and we do this, and then everything's in shambles, and everyone's really just looking out for themselves, and they have no concept, no understanding, and didn't even grow up with an understanding of what real love actually is. And so, so I would say the American dream.
Yeah, I always got a very uneasy feeling about what you call it, the red pill masculinity. I don't even know what it's called, like the Andrew Tate theology.
Yeah. Yep.
Although now he's a Muslim, I think. But if I was a Muslim, I would anathematize him, because even within the Islamic ethic, bro's got to go. But I always got that uneasy feeling about this, and there were some Christians who jumped on the Andrew Tate train, and they're like, yeah, man, masculinity, we need to revive masculinity. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but that's not it, man.
Yeah, that's not
That's not it. This
yeah.
And where I like to point men to, especially younger men who are falling into this very deceptive trap, is the book of Ecclesiastes. Your family, your nation, and your world needs strong men. The devil wants men weak, emasculated, and addicted to porn. This is why I designed the Slaying the Beast course, to help men take back the dominion porn stole from them. This course will help you discover your identity as God's image, how porn leverages and twists that against you, and how with God's help you can turn the tables on the beast and live free. There's also access to a Discord server where you can have fellowship with others in the fight. You do not have to wait any longer to conquer this beast once and for all. Go to lifegiverchurch.net to get started today. Ecclesiastes, excuse me. Because there you have Solomon, presumably, who basically lays out for you the red pill dream life. Yeah, he had all the. He said, "I kept no pleasure from my eyes." He had all the women he could want. He had all the riches, all the real estate, all the vineyards, all the alcohol, anything this guy wanted, he had like this, boom, and in abundance, like you would never achieve his level. And at the end of the book, he says, here's what I figured out. Here's the end of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man, and God will bring everything into judgment, whether good or evil.
Yep.
So do you really think you're going to achieve what he achieved? Do you think you're going to surpass him in his opulence? And if not, then why don't you take his advice? Why don't you agree with his conclusion, skip the BS, and get right down to fear God and keep his commandments?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the guys, a lot of those guys, at least from what I see, it's they'll throw out good facts, right? So they'll see the data and say, these are some messed up things. And so any man can identify and feel like, oh my goodness, here's somebody who's actually voicing a frustration that I've had. Either I voiced it myself, and or these guys are articulating it in a way that I never thought of, and everything about it rings true. And I heard somebody, I don't remember who it was, but they equated it to essentially Absalom and David, right? Those guys are Absalom standing at the gate and being like, oh, if only there was, someone in Israel who would hear you. If only there was, and they're all pointing to themselves. And that even goes for, like Jordan Peterson as well, right? If he's not pointing people to Christ, which is, he's just his own kind of conundrum. That guy just bow the knee already, Jordan. And so, but so you have these guys that are voicing these things, but again, it's the wrong answer. It's the wrong answer. It's like, what is the answer? Yes, you can voice those things, but who is really? I mean, let's roll this one back. Who is really the ultimate man's man? The man that is the studliest stud who ever walked the earth. It isn't Solomon. It's not King David. It's not Andrew Tate. It's not Gandhi. It's not Muhammad. Right? It was Jesus Christ, the ultimate man's man. And our society has kind of painted him as this like weak, sickly looking guy who just gets rolled over and he's there on a cross in a diaper, is kind of how he's just painted. And that when he did talk, he was practically a robot because he could do no wrong. And which, by the way, he did no wrong, right? But we look at him like as if he was so nice. This constantly, and I don't know about you, this is where I get pretty frustrated. I'm just kind of done with it, Alan. I'm done with the 11th commandment of thou shalt be nice. It's like, no. Christ commands us to be salty. Salty. I'm not concerned about your feelings. I'm concerned about glorifying God. I'm concerned about the truth, right? So
just hold on. I got to interrupt you because I got to tell you this. Did you know, on average, if you count all the times Jesus insulted people, it's about 2 times per chapter of a gospel?
Really?
Yeah, if you average it out, it's about 2 insults per chapter.
Per chapter. Wow. That's a great stat. See? And that's way more than like I would imagine. Well, I don't know. I mean, what would that equate to as far as saying nice things to people? I mean,
it depends how you define nice, right? I mean, we're not commanded to be nice.
Yeah. Right. No, we're not. I mean, he healed a lot of people. He did a lot of he did a lot of things that showed people like, hey, God is real and he's here and he loves you.
Do you think there's a difference between being nice and kind?
Well, I think we have to define that difference, right? Because being nice right now is what's ruining society. It's we want to make sure that we don't make people feel like their feelings are hurt or we want to make sure we watch out we don't offend them because we want to be politically correct. Make sure we don't get the women's emotions riled up by saying things like actually patriarchy is the way in which God made the world. So we need to stop trying to appeal to women and that. And I think being nice is what does that. Being kind is I'm going to tell you the truth kindly. I'm going to tell you the truth regardless if you like it or not. Like here it is. Hate me for it, go for it. But here's the truth. When Jesus walked back to your point of insults, Jesus had very choice words, and he had incredibly woe to you Pharisees, right? Like you vipers, you hypocrites, and you're British. Like you're going to hell. You are. You are sons of Satan, that disgusting, vile creature. You're his children. And that, like, I hear fire and brimstone preachers say that, but that's about it. And that is where I think we need to stand strong, and just speak the truth. And so, and that's where, back to the point though, is that Jesus was the ultimate man's man. I mean, there was not only was he incredibly, strong with his words and he spoke authoritatively, not only did he heal the sick and bring sight to the blind, and not only did he conquer death itself, he also did things that were people just overlook. I mean, the dude was walking like 40 miles a day. He would go like 3 days just hiking and with hardly any food, and then be like, okay guys, we're tired, we gotta get some food, and then a crowd of people would show up and he's like, all right guys, I guess we can't eat right now, but when I'm done preaching all day, then these people are gonna be tired, and then before we eat, we gotta feed all these people. I mean, what? The dude was a workhorse, the guy, but he also was the perfect example of like learning how to rest and get respite and lead and in every way of Jesus Christ's life, like in his ministry on this earth, every single way, he was the manliest man who ever lived. And he's the kind of man that every woman should look to try and find to marry. That's it.
Oh man, that's a lot of pressure, bro.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a lot of pressure.
Right. And then too, every man should look to follow him. And then every woman every man should look for a girl who's actually going to listen to hard words and not run from them, right? Who can speak the truth like that. And that's what it's going to be to live a life that's where you have every day dominion, right? You are the one who has gravitas or gravity in the situation. You're the one who is walking in authority in something, and you're bringing value to other people.
Humility comes to mind. Have the mind of Christ. which was humble. And being humble, you can't live that life without humility. It's the key ingredient, and one of the hardest ingredients for men um, to exhibit. Right? We talked about the red pill thing, and it's like that's a sin almost in that crowd, is to be humble. Like, they can't imagine a man doing something wrong and humbly apologizing to a woman. Right? They can't
Right.
imagine a man doing something wrong and even to a child apologizing, saying, "Hey, son, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You know,
Yeah. Forgive me. That's a big word.
forgive me." Yeah.
Right. That's humbling. Yeah. And you're right, man. And that is, it's just, and it's not, I mean, that's with the red pill guys. And that's also, I mean, that's just, I would say that's prevalent for men and women in our society right now. And I think a lot of it does come back to that question that you asked, essentially, what's the biggest fiat scam going on right now? And I think that is, it's just that you think that there's nothing wrong with you, and that all of your dreams can come true by you just plowing ahead. And you shouldn't ever lay those down. When, if you want real life and real joy, you lay all of those down at the feet of Christ. You lay them down at the cross of Christ, and you follow Him. You pick up your cross, and you follow Him, and that's a humbling thing to do. But in it, man, like, you get everything. You get everything. You get freedom from addictions, right? You actually get peace in your life. You get joy in your life. You get love, peace, joy, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. You get all these things that people talk about but don't necessarily get, right? Like, and I'm just gonna say this: if you're listening to this right now and your life is miserable, and you haven't given your life to Christ, and you've listened this far, then I'll just say this right now: your life is miserable. Like, just give it up. Give it up already. What are you really holding on to? Give it all up to Him and let Him lead, and you will find life on the other end. You'll find the most amazing life on the other end. So he's out for you, man. He's coming for you.
So what you're saying is things can get better. They don't have
Yeah.
to get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Christ, right? They do get better.
If that's all you take from this podcast, then praise the Lord, because I really want guys, even like, look, you're going to have trials and tribulations, you're going to have difficulties and challenges, but despite that, there is a way when you walk with the Lord to still have joy in the midst of that, and to have purpose in the midst of that, and to redeem those things which prior to a life walking with the Lord may have just been too much despair and too much discomfort and would have crushed you. But when you walk with the Lord, even in difficulty, you can have joy. And that's the miracle of walking with the Lord in this life. Let's transition a bit to, well, let me just answer the question myself. The most fiat thing. There's so many options to choose from, but the one I would zero in on is pornography. Pornography is one of the most fiat things in our culture, and it's one of those things that everyone knows about, but nobody really wants to talk about or bring to light. So my journey, well, I mean, my first time viewing anything pornographic, I was in grade 7, so I don't know how old I was,
12?
11 maybe or so, 12. And it was in the schoolyard, right? It's like, hey, look at this thing, and it was
Yeah,
like,
here's this magazine. Yeah.
whoa, that's nice. I like that image. And then from there, we're off to the races, and didn't think anything of it until I became a Christian and realized, oh, this is not the way. And then having to get freedom from that vice was a process and a journey. But I'm thankful
Yeah.
for it, because I learned a lot and grew with the Lord a lot through it. So tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know you mentioned pornography on Twitter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So give us your testimony.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was 7 or 8. I was in 3rd grade. First time, it was in the woods. I was in an apartment building. We had a tree house in the woods, and we go tromp around the woods all the time. And one of the neighborhood kids grabbed his dad's Playboys and brought him in the woods. and saw my first, naked ladies, and I to this day can remember those same images. Right, it's just like in my mind. And I remember it really, really bothered me. I was like, there's just something wrong about all of this, and I don't know what or why, but I don't like it. I don't like this. There's something wrong. And so I went home to my parents. They went out and grabbed them, and they confronted the whole situation and everything. But man, those images were like, they just tormented me for a long time. I could not get them out of my head. And then once I turned 12, 13, hormones are raging as well. Then those same schoolyard boys, things like that come around, and all of a sudden, like those things are like desired, right? And yet I still have that just terrible feeling that it's just guilt and shame, and it just feels gross and wrong, and yet somehow you want it. It's like the dog eats his own vomit, right? Like it's just like, yeah, it's gross. And so yeah, so that was it. And then when I struggled with it, same thing, off to the races till I was 18. I gave my life to Christ. And when I gave my life to Christ, he did such a gracious thing to me, and that it was not a struggle for me for years. I mean, it just like, he just almost like just wiped me clean. I mean, he just wiped me clean. It was no big deal. And it was like, all right, here we are. And then before I got married, it was about 6 months before I got married, I fell back into it. And then it was about 2 months, and then I confessed everything. One of these big things and you learn, and it's so hard to do, but you have to confess it. You have to bring out the light. It's not like, and a lot of people say, well, I'm just confessing between me and God. It's just me and God. It's like, dude, there's no.
That's the easy part. That's the easy part.
Yeah. Like, no, you actually have to humble yourself. You got to go to the Lord. Absolutely. And you need to go and you need to bring it in light of other brothers, because you need to live out loud. You need to live in the light as he is in the light, right? Because bad things grow in the dark. And so if you are having these things, you're doing these things, and you're keeping it in the dark, it's only going to get worse. It's not getting any better. And so, brought it to light. And the Lord, he helped me out and get married. And I was doing really well till it was about 5 years into marriage. And then I slipped up again, And then that's where I think it was that time where it was like, okay, this is I confessed to my wife, and I confessed to and it's never, since then, it's never been, really all the way since before I got married, I've always kept a short account. It's like one of those like, ooh, look what I just did. Ooh, that sucks. I need to go and confess. Right. And I never let it to linger. But man, when you get married and you do it, it cuts deeper. It's harder. It's even harder to confess, because you're like, oh crap, like she's my wife and I love her, and I don't want to, not only do I not want to hurt her, but I also am terrified of her leaving me. Right. Like and the stronger your relationship, the more that's not going to happen, right? But Satan is there telling you not to, right? It's like you are emotionally incentivized to not do it, because all that you have to look forward to is hurting your wife's feelings, because you're going to bring it up, and then whoever knows, you have to walk with her through that healing process of what you did, because it's your fault, and simultaneously not just rolling over to allow her emotions to rule the situation. Right, because you still are commanded to guide her to the Lord. To for some of you listening, hey, just so you know, your wives are still held accountable to forgive. It's a part of life. Like forgiveness is not optional in the Christian life. It's flat mandatory. It is a part. It's like the thing, right? So that's my journey. But it's is always been, since I've kept a short account. It's always been something that has not been as bad as some friends that I have, for example. I mean, I've been married for 13 years now, and the older I get, and I have friends who got married at the same time I did, or shortly before, shortly after, and they're coming out now saying, I've been addicted to porn for 10 years, honey, and I'm so sorry. Like, the damage that's caused there is catastrophic, not just for the marriage, but also for these guys who for 10 years have porn brain. And every time they go to be with their wife, right? Because this is the other thing, right? You go to be with your wife, and you think, if you're not married, you think, oh, I'm gonna get married and this is all gonna fix itself. It's like, no. You go to be with your wife. Well, you for however many years have had imagination. Your brain has been creating neural pathways to these different images and associating that really good feeling of an orgasm with all these images of other women. So when you go to be in real life with your wife, guess what your brain's trying to do? Your brain's trying to go back to all these women instead of being in the moment with your wife. And so that's like, it only gets worse, right? Like the consequences are only greater. So number one, I'd say like never do it. And then to keep a very short account and have accountability that has teeth, right? Like don't hang around a bunch of guys and be like, yeah, I did it too this week. And sorry. Like, okay, well, we all did it and we all do it every week. And then it becomes like a support group, not an accountability group, so you need accountability with some teeth to it.
Yeah, my story is similar in that, I viewed it a little bit later in life. Still young, those formative years where your brain is just a sponge. And I'm not surprised. See, now I don't remember that first image, but your brain was a lot more spongier at the age of, what did you say, 7?
7, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an age where, oh man. But anyways, yeah, so that whole thing, and then I got saved and then married and thought, oh, once I get married, it'll maybe be easier. No, it wasn't. And so I confessed to brothers, to God, and it was, but the final boss was my wife, right? It's like, that's like the final boss of confession. If you can beat that boss, then you're home free, right? I mean, at that point, this thing just loses power over you, if you're married, of course.
Yep.
And I was trying to build up the courage to do it, but God sort of, well, not sort of, he thrust it in my face, because she actually had a dream. She had a dream and said, hey, are you watching pornography? And I was like, well, not really. And just trying to hem and haw around it. And she goes, well, I had this dream where God pretty much told me that you were, and to come talk to you. And at that point, I was like, well, yeah. I mean,
I'm not going to say no at that.
At that point, it was like God entered the room and was like, dude, like, just stop, like you can't hide anymore. And, and then, but, thank the Lord that, that happened that way, because she was very supportive and great. Now, she knew I struggled with it before we got married and stuff, so it wasn't a surprise that something like this might re-emerge. But I'm thankful that she was definitely supportive, and, her support and her understanding was the most powerful antidote to freedom from this thing.
Yeah.
Because she didn't shame, she didn't guilt. Obviously, she wasn't happy,
right.
But she really had a redemptive goal here, right? So, for any ladies out there, like, yeah, you're going to be offended, you're going to be hurt, and that's okay. But you have a lot of power to help your husband overcome this thing. You do.
Yeah, and that gentle and quiet spirit, man, that's incredibly powerful, right? And then you feel at the end of it, it's like, wow, she didn't hate on me, she didn't just drag my name through the mud, she still respected me at the end of it, even though I did something disrespectful. She didn't respect the action, but she still respected me, right? That'll change a man faster than anything else. Like, oh my goodness, I'm not deserving of this woman.
No, for real though. I mean, it was the grace of God on display. Probably the greatest human display of God's grace I've ever experienced. Had to be that, because it was literally God, showing her something. Like, bro, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Thank God for His grace.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, I have to say the same for mine, as far as just, it is the best display of God's grace through a human. Has also been from my wife. That's above and beyond. There's no question about it. And for each time when it's happened, to quickly forgive, to still respect me, right? Like her respect for me is like my love for her is is unconditional, right? Like every woman wants unconditional love, but they don't recognize that, like, they think that respect needs to be earned. It's like, well, no, if you want me to love unconditionally, respect comes unconditionally as well, and that's real respect. And so that's man, it really does. It calls you up, calls you higher. and it points out who you are. It's like, that's not, this pornography thing is not who you are, and it's not becoming of Christ. Like, okay.
So we're both on Twitter, and Twitter can be a great place to learn things and to network, but it's also pretty degenerate when it comes to
So Wild West,
sexually
man.
explicit images.
Yeah.
I'll post stuff and then just get, you know,
Immediate like.
it goes through seasons, it seems, where it's like bunch of porn bots and then they disappear for a bit and then they like. And what I used to do would be click the bots, block. But I think what happens when you do that is you click it and then the algorithm thinks you want more, despite the
Yeah.
fact that you're blocking it.
Yeah.
You clicked it, right? So I'm like, okay, I stopped clicking it, then they went away, and then they would come back, and then they went away. So very, very frustrating. Now I just do nothing. I ignore it. I don't even try, and I just move on.
Yeah.
Do you have any practical tips about how you can navigate? Because it's a powerful platform we can use, but how do you navigate this platform when it's at times pushing this in front of you? And like, I have a zero tolerance policy. If I see anybody post anything even slightly sexually explicit, you're muted right away.
Yeah, and that's a great. I mean, I think using the mute button liberally is a good go for it. And but what I do, I number one, I never look into who follows me. Like, I don't click on that list. I know some people go to block the bots and stuff, and I just do not click on that list. Like, I don't need to even see it. I don't. I discover when people follow me, and it's like, all right, cool. Like when you followed me, I thought, oh, cool, I got Bastard Coin, great, and that was back when I think I only had like 500 followers or something. And so one thing, I never look at the follows. For the bots, I don't mind blocking them if I'm on my if I'm on my computer, because I can easily do it without having to click on their profile. It used to be that you couldn't do it unless you clicked on their profile, and then you had to block them from the profile, in which case I remember trying to do that once, and that was a big mistake, because then they're born right there on the pinned tweet or the banner or whatever, and it's like, oh my goodness. And so, but I don't mind blocking them from that. But I honestly, for the most part, I do what you do. I fully ignore it. Like, okay, cool. Just don't look at that notification. Right? I just ignore it, and then they'll go away, and then they come back. Same thing. And then for scrolling down, you can kind of cater your feed a little bit. Number one, through lists, so you can make a list and just go, instead of going down your follows, for you and following page, you can do those. You could also just click on the list and have specific lists of people that you want to respond to, and just scroll on those. I have for my Twitter, I do my best, actually, and this is why I kind of more argue for people who are Christians to not be on Twitter as a consumer, but to be on Twitter as a producer. And if anybody wants to, you can DM me. I'm happy to share for free. I created this course called Digital Dominion, and it's essentially just 7 PDFs you get for free that go out and show you how to essentially gain a following and be a producer on Twitter rather than the consumer, because I think the consumers, in the end, you're the product. And so if you're getting on Twitter just to waste time, then I would just say stop. Like, don't get, if you are listening to this and you get on Twitter to waste time, then you are wasting time. Don't. Like, go do something more wholesome than Twitter in an argument, a bumper sticker argument, where the most people don't care what you have to say. They just want to spew their crap, right? But if you are on Twitter to produce and to provide value and to do something like start a business or just start producing your thoughts of, wanting to flush out your theology, or you're wanting, then okay, cool. Then be a producer. And at that point, if you're coming on Twitter to produce, then you can have more. I'm coming all the way back to this point. What I do is to have more rules, which for me, I have rules of, okay, I'm not going to spend all day just watching the notifications buttons and likes, like, right? I'm going to get on at these times. I'm going to post this content. I'm going to allow myself to respond to the content I post. And then I'm going to go comment on these specific people's posts, right? And if I scroll to home, then I'm only scrolling home specifically to look for maybe something random or something that could be trending, of which I should find fairly quickly. And if I don't find it fairly quickly, then it's not worth my time, and come on the next day. I mean, that's kind of it. So my goal with Twitter is to be on it, an hour, 2 hours max a day for what I do, and then do other work. But again, I look at it as a producer side of like to work, which is what you do too. A lot is you're on Twitter, promoting your book, promoting the podcast, getting involved with Bitcoin and things like that. And so that's a producer mindset. I just argue for every Christian to be a producer in a world of consumerism.
Yeah, it's very helpful. One of the lessons that I have in the Slaying the Beast program, which is catered to help men overcome porn or create a sort of strategy for doing that. One of the lessons is called Mastering Sexual Energy with Mission. And it applies on Twitter, where if you're not on there with a mission, with a purpose,
Yeah.
you will probably fall into these rabbit holes. And on Twitter, porn is like 3 clicks away.
The internet.
It's not that
I mean, you
far.
shouldn't be on the internet. Yeah, literally,
The
you're
internet,
3 clicks
yeah.
away anywhere. You can get it whenever.
Yeah, it's easily accessible, and not only that, but it's sort of coming for you. It's not that you have to even necessarily go and look for it a lot of the times. A lot of the times it's coming to look for you. I'll give you one quick story. A few weeks ago this happened, actually. It was on my birthday of all days, and my wife got really sick, had to go to the hospital. My birthday is on one day, and then my daughter's is 2 days later. And it just happened to fall like on the weekend. It was like perfect, right? And she got sick, had to go to the hospital, missed my birthday, missed our daughter's birthday. It was really a very stressful time. Like we thought that this could be bad. Like she could maybe have some serious health issues. Thank God that it's resolving, and it wasn't what we thought it was. But at the time, it was very stressful, right? I'm sitting there going, man, my wife might die. Like this sucks. It's my birthday. It's my birthday, and it's my daughter's birthday, and there's a serious worry here that she might have a serious thing. So very stressful. Nighttime comes. I'm zonked. I lay on the couch, pull out my phone, and open Facebook. Now, Facebook, official policy is you can't advertise porn, right? Well, the first thing I see is literally porn, an ad. It said sponsored, and it was literally a pornographic video. Like, not like a bikini ad. No, like literally pornographic. Yeah. And I'm like exhausted in my weakest time, right, mentally, and I just open my phone, I look at it, I go, okay, close that. And I remember thinking, okay, devils, I see what you're doing. I'm on to you. So I click on Twitter. Same thing. This has never happened ever. Ever. It hasn't happened since. I took my phone, I threw it across the room. Physically, threw it. And when I did, I felt a presence, a heavy presence, leave. And that scripture comes to mind, resist the devil and he will flee.
100%.
That's literally what happened. Like, the devils saw me in a weak position, said, all right, guys, make it happen. Boom, boom. Threw the phone, resisted, and they fled. So don't discount how spiritual this battle is too. The devils aren't just sitting back, relying that your flesh will do all the work. Your flesh will do most of the work, but they're going to prod and poke and manipulate as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And because resist the devil and he will flee from you. I think just before that, it's like the devil is like a prowling lion or a roaring lion, like prowling around to see whom he can devour. And that's exactly what happens, right? And just like you said, I mean, it's so pervasive. It's everywhere. It is on the hunt for you. I had a conversation with my son because they see me work in front of a computer, and to them, like, what's the difference between that and like a video game, right? Like, dad's in front of a computer. And so, but I have to tell them, and they know that I work on Twitter, they know that I work with YouTube, they know. So I have to tell them, like, no, you have to look at all of this. This is, every time I get on here, this is filled with people that don't care about me at all. Like, the entire system is engineered to suck away my life, to enslave me to whatever, addiction that it can, to keep me in front of this screen for as long as it can. And Twitter is no different. In the course that I have, again, it's free if people want to take it. It's I essentially lay out, like, if you're going to be on Twitter, or YouTube or anything else, you need to know the players of the game and how the game is being played. So that way you're not the one getting played, right? And on Twitter, there's really three players. You got Twitter itself, which is like, the ring of power, right? That is trying to and working, continuously with engineers at the helm, working to addict you to the screen. The content creators who are looking to profit from who? From you, right? And then you have the consumers who doom scroll and are just taking whatever they're getting, right? And so our argument, like, just like you're talking right now, is like, one, don't let Twitter turn you into the product, which means you cannot be a consumer. So if you're on Twitter, you need to be the other option. You need to be the producer. You need to be a content creator. You need to be, and the world needs more Christian influencers because the world needs more Christian influence. Right. And so if you're going to be on there to produce and you're going to have other people consume, then you as a Christian should be feeding people the truth. You should be feeding people something good, right? Something that's actually going to bring a value to them, make their life better, not jump in and just start being all spitty and spatty and eye for eye too. Like, getting angry and easily flustered, and then your emotions are involved. And guess what? You an hour spent and you just gave an hour of your life to the Lord of the Rings. Like, you just can't. What did you do? What, I mean, literally, you will stand before God with that time. What did you do with it? Now there's grace and forgiveness, of course, but, like, be on mission. Be salty. Be salty. Like, be salty. That's like the church is just lost salt.
No, nobody likes a dull potato chip.
Be salty.
Be salty. Yeah. Imagine you open a bag of chips and they forgot salt
and oil, right? Like,
imagine it's just like,
yeah, it's just bland.
It's disgusting.
It's milk toast. Yeah, you throw it out. It's like something lukewarm, right? You just spit out. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that. And that's what back to the 11th commandment, thou shalt be nice. That's what we've turned it all into, right? That's where I think a lot of guys in the Reformed world, which I know that you're in the Reformed world, a lot of guys talk about the church being effeminate. It's like, you're not preaching to men. And it comes back to the whole point. Why do the red pill guys, why are they so enticing and attempting to follow? It's because they got salt. It might not be the best salt for you, but at least they're speaking the truth and they're not afraid to say it, right? And so as a Christian, we should absolutely be salty. We should be looking like Christ in that. Maybe we should have some more insults. Maybe we should be like Jesus and insult people a little bit more.
Don't tempt me. So this has been a great talk. One more question, and then we can wrap this up. It's basically this. What do you think about Bitcoin in terms of, this is, Bitcoin is part of the name of the podcast too. So let's just throw it at the end here. What do you think about Bitcoin, and how does that fit into taking dominion for Christ? Or does it?
This has been your thing. I'll preface. So I got into Bitcoin. I'll preface this with saying I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I got into Bitcoin in 2017, and it was all when I watched a YouTube video that just explained how it worked. And at the end of the video, they said, it wasn't even a Bitcoin, like, salesy type of thing, get into Bitcoin. It was just like, here's how Bitcoin works. We think it's pretty cool. It could be a part of the future. We don't know, right? And I think the video may have been made in like 2015. So and when I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is inevitable. Like, once I understood it, I saw this is inevitable. This is hard money, and this isn't a matter of if, but of when. This is going to take over the world. Like this is trading bad money for good money. Like we need to trade our bad money for good money. And Bitcoin on a fundamental basis is wonderful. And then before you even wrote your book, which I read your book and it was great. Before you wrote it, I would tell people, like, look, the world is filled with unequal weights and measures, and God says that He hates that. That's an abomination to Him, and that just weight and a just measure is from the Lord. And I'm like, I look at Bitcoin, I'm like, this is from the Lord. And like this is God, like this is God Almighty giving a gift to mankind. Like this is incredible. This is great. This is, I mean, everybody should have it. Now I say that to say, like, I'm super pro Bitcoin, and I think a Bitcoin will be around in 1,000 years. Yeah, I do. Unless the only thing that's going to stop it, I think, is would be World War III and electric grid is down for 200 years, and all the satellites in space die. Bitcoin's dead too. Then, like, okay, that's cool, but we have also other bigger problems at that point than than Bitcoin going to zero. So I think it is good hard money that is the future, and it is something that when you look at scripturally I've yet to hear any good scriptural arguments against it, and only scriptural arguments, and I can only see scriptural arguments for it. And so when I see something that I look at and I see, like, this looks like God made it, and this looks to be totally inevitable, then a wise man, if I'm like putting two and two together, a wise man should put two together and just get into it, right? So I'm super pro Bitcoin.
Awesome. Well, Charlton, Everyday Dominion, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life to come and talk to me about these important issues. There's so much more we could talk about. We'll have you on again, I'm sure, in the future to discuss all the different things that need discussing and discipling and Christian thought to guide. But until then, thanks so much. And for those watching or listening, please subscribe, follow,
do all the stuff.
Do all the stuff.
Do all the stuff, man. Subscribe, follow, like, hit the alarm notification, get on here. This is the future. You got to jump on.
Yeah, that's all free as well. It doesn't cost you anything to click the bell or to click subscribe or to click. The one my wife told me to tell you guys to do is auto download. Click auto download on your podcast. I didn't even know that's a thing. Apparently it is. So auto download so you never miss an episode. And until next time, God bless you all. Grace and peace. I wrote The Bible and Bitcoin for you, Bible-believing Christian, and in it I lay out the biblical basis for what money is, why our current fiat monetary system is ungodly, and how Bitcoin is the best and most viable, biblically compliant replacement for government fiat money. There's even a small group study guide in the back with additional resources to study with your church small group. Get it on Amazon or pay with Bitcoin at thebibleandbitcoin.com for a discount.